Hi, welcome to the Moog Sound Lab. I'm Steve Maass, this is Steve Dunnington, and we are here with, I better check first. Yes, amazing synthesizers. We're here with the Mother-32 and the DFAM, two fine creations by Moog engineer Steve Dunnington. And Steve, I think I just want to start off by thanking you, actually, for your ingenuity and your inspiration for creating these, because these two instruments actually changed my life. And I've been with Moog for a while. It's what actually got me into modular synthesis. And these are semi-modular synthesizers, but what I found is that it really gave me an introduction to learning the finer points of patching and how I could be a better creator and have more inspiration myself and have more freedom. And all set, with the origins was the Mother-32. In one box, I found that I had everything to get me started with the semi-modular aspect of it. We have our signal path for the synthesizer that out of the box, you're able to play without knowing what you're doing, to patch with it. And then you could slowly start learning how to patch and experiment without worry of, oh, if I patch this into that, is it going to break anything? It's just like you can't make a mistake. You're only going to experiment, explore, and have just an amazing time creating new sounds. And this is what launched me into getting into more modular. And really, for what the package is, also, you get so much power. Whether you're someone who's just getting started or a professional who's making music, there's so much crammed into this box that in the world of Eurorack itself, you'd probably be paying 3-4 times the amount of money for everything that you get in here, from oscillators, filters, sequencers, envelope generators, noise generators, mults. I mean, the list goes on, and it's fantastic. And I use 3 Mother-32s myself today and a DFAM, but today we have 1 Mother-32 and 3 DFAMs. I think overall, the sound of it is massive. Everywhere that you hear it, it's just it's huge, absolutely huge sound. And I thought I would just play a few things that I was noodling around on earlier and all that to show you what I kind of do with it and how I like to start manipulating the sound. And what we have that I put together over here is the Mother-32 is actually controlling the DFAM. So the two are actually synced together, and they're going to be using the Mother-32's clock.
Yeah, so you got this, that's your clock output from the Mother?
Yeah, that assignable output jack is so useful. There's 8 different choices that you have from that assignable output, including sample and hold. Which I've been recently having a lot of fun with, doing a variety of different things. Right now I have it set just to each step. So the DFAM will be moving at the same clock pace as the Mother-32. You know what I also enjoy about it? They're two very different sequencers, but the DFAM is a purely analog sequencer, and I always get a kick out of the fact that if I do want it to start on step 1, I've got to set it first to step 8 so that when I press run on the Mother-32, it will start on 1, whereas the Mother-32 will start on 1, so long as you hit reset and you're back at the beginning.
There's nothing but analog in the DFAM, so.
Yeah, beautiful machine. So yeah, here's a couple of things I've been working on over here. Up this oscillator. The pulse width modulation on this oscillator is fantastic. Makes it so wide. Bring in some getting really heavy, but it was really meant to create a little bit more bouncy beat. If I start closing up this filter all the way, there went my oscillator, but I'm going to modulate that with the envelope generator. Oh, please do, jump in there.
Take this guy here.
Trigger output. Nice. Here's my second oscillator of the DFAM, giving us some high end. All right, I like my video game music, so I'm going to take us to video game land and change us over to the second filter that you have on the Mother-32 going into high pass. But, you know, I wanted to get a little bit more video game, like, let's make this really blocky.
Sounds good. You said video game, right?
Yes. All right, looks like we're already starting to get some questions here too, so we'll keep on jamming all the time. First question we have here is, can you explain how you came up with DFAM?
Okay. Can I explain how I came up with DFAM? Well, I mean, so analog synthesizers are really fun for making percussion sounds. And it goes back to, I mean, if you go back to like mini Moog days or even modular days of Moog, there's been all kinds of examples of people making cool percussion sounds with Moog synths. And surprisingly, the Voyager is actually a very good source of exploring percussion synthesis. And so the DFAM is actually came from a lot of explorations of possibilities in the Voyager. I was thinking about what kind of circuits and how you combine them to get like a really wide palette of percussive sounds. You can dial in sort of, you know, acoustic emulations, or you can just get like pure blips and bleeps. I think one of the things about all the stuff that we do is that there's a very large space to explore, and you know, you may find this little section over here that's like does this one very specific thing, like, you know, toms or, you know, snares or bass or whatever. But you can go much further than that. And so so the voice itself was the idea was to, like, what would you do to make a really, you know, awesome percussion synthesizer? It's not too complicated, but does a lot of sounds.
Which I think is important to really identify with the instrument, that it's a percussion synthesizer and not a drum machine. I very quickly started realizing that, you know, with 2 oscillators in this pitch row, you can literally turn this and dial everything into place scales.
Yeah.
And you're not making percussion sounds at all at that point. So when you talk about that palette, we're talking about a core of where you make fantastic percussion sounds, but can also go well beyond.
Yeah, yeah. And the secret sauce in here probably is going to be the velocity. So, you know, if any of y'all have ever played drums, you know, you're never playing at constant dynamics. You know, good music has quiet parts, loud parts. Some good music has no quiet parts, or just all loud parts. But there's a lot of the more dynamic your music is, the more interesting and the more tension you can create in it. So, yeah. So being able to simulate like hitting something hard or hitting something soft That was the idea behind Velocity. It's an idea that's been around for a long time in electronic music. And the way that it's implemented in the DFAM is interesting because what it does is your envelope's amplitude changes with that velocity parameter. So your envelopes are not always at a constant amplitude, and then you're scaling something from there. So that the shape of them changes a little bit with that velocity level, as does the amplitude. So that is kind of an analog to how hard you whack something.
Yeah. The spice of life.
Well, yeah. How hard you knock it, yeah.
Right.
So,
and then, yeah, I mean, this row over here on the DFAM, your velocity, I mean, these are these levels from, anything from completely off to all the way up, and then everything in between over there too, which I thought it was fantastic that the addition of the velocity output can happen also, so you can send those control voltage positions someplace else.
yeah.
And I think you said you had some really fun tricks that you can do with that.
There are all kinds of tricks you can do with that. Yeah, so, I mean, the main thing being with velocity, things aren't on or off. They're anywhere in between on and
Anywhere in
off.
between,
Yeah,
sure.
that's like the main thing, and that's what makes parameters have, or makes sound have useful variation. One of the things I like to do is, oh, that answers that question, right? Well, I guess one of the things I like to do is create kind of random variations by modulating the velocity with actually one of the VCOs. So if you set, I think I have it, did I do it on, which one did I do it on? Let's patch that up. Maybe we'll just listen to this one. So if I listen to this one and that, so you got this kind of nice little clickety-click thing. And then I'll take a VCO, which is kind of a slow speed, make it a triangle, patch it into velocity. All right, well, what happened? It goes from being a repeating eight-step pattern to that same 8-step pattern, but your different steps are getting emphasized.
Yeah, no, we got some more life. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and if as you move the VCO frequency that you're clocking that or modulating the velocity with, you get more regular sorts of repetitions.
Very jazzy.
You can get kind of jazzy stuff. So what is that? That's the interference pattern. So interference pattern between the frequency of the VCO and the tempo that you're running the sequencer at. And the top half of the triangle wave, which goes up to 5 volts peak, is going into velocity. So only when it's above 0 is it even a possibility that it sounds. And then if it lines up, where it lines up with when the trigger happens is going to determine what the velocity is. So it's kind of an interesting, you get kind of stuttering stuff or things like that.
Yeah.
That's one of the tricks I like to create some kind of random variations. You have this cycling pattern, but it's never exactly the same. So it kind of creates, it extends the 8-step sequencer.
Right,
Yeah.
sure. Now, we're talking about these being full range oscillators, and there's 2 on each of these. What about the possibility of creating a multi-oscillator synthesizer with this?
It's totally doable. It's, yeah, in fact, if you have this set up right here, it's a really
Well, tear apart whatever you
fairly
need.
easy patch to come up with. Yeah, the DFAM doesn't have to just do percussion sounds. We'll turn off the. So let's first. What is the DFAM doing right now? Let's see. Well, whatever this light is going to determine what the sound is.
Yeah. Because we did have a comment, I believe, also that we were talking about the DFAM sequencer and the Mother-32 sequencer. And again, just to clarify, they're 2 different sequencers. The DFAM sequencer is purely analog. Therefore, in order to start on beat 1, you have to set the sequencer to the step before, so that when you start it, it starts on 1. It's just the nature of an analog sequencer.
Yeah. All right, so we have, I disconnected the VCOs here from the sequencer. So that's our sound, essentially. And then we can give a little more. Okay, there we go. All right. So let's see. The first thing we need a keyboard signal. We need a trigger signal and a keyboard signal. So let's get this guy. I'll take my gate out of my Mother-32, go to the trigger in. So now.
Ooh, nice. I'm gonna start tuning these up, I think.
That was hard sync, so you don't have to tune it so hard. All right, now you're gonna have to retune it because guess what?
Okay.
I'm gonna do that and that. So what I have here.
Three oscillators.
Yeah, so if you play your sequence, right? There you go.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a real simple way. So what we have, gate to trigger the DFAM, and we have keyboard to a mult, and 2 channels of the mult to the 2 VCO inputs. And then you can do fun stuff with that.
Yeah.
So that's just a voice expander. Now we're mixing them in a mixer. If you don't have a mixer, we've got a secret trick that you can use to listen to the whole thing. So I'll take the VCO1 out and VCO2 out here. And I'm going to plug them into the mix here. We have a mixer on the Mother-32. We'll set that in the middle. It'll be a nice even mix. Take that output and external audio. And so
let's
now,
give that some signal there.
Play.
Make them balanced.
And then you can do fun stuff too. Take your triangle. Control the blend between the 2 oscillators. There you go.
Fun stuff, man. Yeah.
So not even using the sequencer of the DFAM, we're just
Taking the 2 oscillators. So we could theoretically create a 7 oscillator synthesizer right now.
You know you got another oscillator in DFAM too, right?
Yeah. Are we not even using the second one?
No, we're using it. I'm
you're
talking about
the
the sequencer.
The sequencer, yes.
Yeah. So because I'm triggering through here, I've broken the connection fully between the VCOs and the sequencer. So you can actually, yes, you can run this thing at audio rates. So
there we go.
And I can do a thing, can make a graphic sort of wave. Let's hit this hard sync back on. I'm going to steal one of these CVs. Plug that into there. And then we're going to mix VCO2.
So the keyboard now of the Mother-32 is in controlling the tempo of the sequencer at audio rate.
Yeah, so what does it sound like?
There it is, sequencer as an oscillator.
It's not in tune, but you could make it in tune. Anyway,
if we spent enough time, now could we be able to do that with the pitch?
There's various ways you could do it. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, you you modulate the tempo until it's in tune. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So that's kind of a cool thing. So actually, we were listening to the velocity output. So that you can use the velocity output as a signal, a pitch output as a signal, or you can use the trigger output as a signal.
Yeah. And now just to recap also, because I found this feature on the Mother-32, like I said before, there's so much crammed into this box that you'd have to buy multiple modules for in Eurorack that you get in 60 HP. And that's that VC mix, which I find really fascinating because you got your two inputs for it, and it just pans left and right. And this is not only going to mix voltages, but can also mix audio. So you have a two-channel audio mixer.
Yeah, that's what we're using.
Well, which is what we were just doing.
Yeah, we were using it for that. Yeah.
Bringing that into the external audio input with this additional mix over here, so that can combine two things, or just turn all the way right. And I have to tell you, when I'm playing live, it's so nice to be able to just on board grab a giant knob and just turn something all the way off, all the way on, to bring parts in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact it's voltage controlled, and it's actually, the way it's wired up, you can use it as a VCA too. Kind of cheating by just plugging something into the mix 2 input, and then a positive voltage here will turn that up, essentially. So that's kind of cool. And you can also use it as a voltage source with nothing plugged into the mixer inputs. You can use it as something.
An attenuator?
No, just the source that makes things go up and down. You know, that's the thing about voltage control. It's all math. It's going up or it's going down. Positive, negative. Yeah, it's just up and down. It's easy addition.
Well, before we maybe start making some more sounds, I think there might be some more questions coming. We'll keep on going, okay?
Oh, so I was talking a little bit earlier about the DFAM and about different ways of creating variation on the DFAM. And another thing I like to do, other than that little velocity from a VCO trick, I like clocking it from things that aren't regular clocks. So I can show you a quick thing. If I set, for instance, these velocities to a different pattern other than just, well, it's something. That's some kind of rhythm there. Here's my favorite rhythm. Okay, so I'm going to plug in this guy. He's going to be clocked from the velocity of this guy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start running this. I'm going to turn his volume down. So we're just listening to this. Okay. All right. All right. I'm going to hit run. Now, you see it's not advancing, doom, 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 doom. It's advancing. Actually, if we listen to this, we should be able to hear it.
Nice.
So, I mean, this might not be the best example because I hadn't had time to, really really set it up the way I would normally set it up, but I'm doing it on the fly. But the idea is that clocks don't have to be just step, 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 step. They can be gates from your Mother-32. I mean, another example. Really,
you could take that assignable output of the sample and hold on the Mother-32 and have it clock and get something completely different.
Right. Like if we're not clocking it externally and it's just going in the 8-step pattern, that's what you hear.
Waveform from another another piece of gear, right?
Turn this down. And then if I take the gate out of here, so here's another thing. So what, you had your sequence going. Is it on every step? Oh, there you hear a step. So if you have another step sequencer or a trigger sequencer or something like that, you can clock this in unusual ways to get the pattern to kind of rotate. And another really fun thing that you can do, if you're clocking from another source. I don't have a long enough cable. Do you have any long cable?
Yeah, there's plenty.
There we go. Long cable. So I'm now clocking from the Mother-32 sequence, right? This is that guy. I'll take the gate though and patch it into my trigger. Now, if I go to step mode here, turn off some of these. by having a different pattern of triggers from a different pattern of clocks, you can create patterns that sort of shift and rotate in interesting ways. And then you have, of course, other CV stuff that you can do to make constant variation.
Sure.
So my point is with the DFAM, it's a very simple analog sequencer, but it's very easy to do things to not make it just repeat over and over again.
Sure. Which, now you can also do this just with one DFAM. Like if you took one of the VCO outs to some of the clock, because I think that's one of the questions that we're getting is, how can we do some live improvisation with a DFAM, harmonizing other parts to the DFAM?
Yeah, well, you have to tune things. One way, if you have a tuner, you can use a tuner and patch it to the VCO outs to tune things on the fly while you're not actually listening to them. Mm-hmm. That's one way I've seen people deal with that sort of thing. I've others seen people who just tune things on the fly by ear.
Yeah, use by ear, sure.
But yeah, it's all, being that it's all analog, it doesn't do it for you. You have to learn how to tune it.
And I think because of that reason, it feels very alive to me when I play. It's very intuitive. And responsive is probably even a better word, because you do have to tune that pitch sequence row in there too, and still having the ability to have hard sync with it, or just have the pitch modulation affect VCO2 or VCO1 and 2 at the same time from that row, and the different inputs that you have for those as well.
Yeah. Got a question. Is it possible to auto-tune DFAM by semitone? Well, there are ways of doing that. You can run it into an auto-tune plugin, actually. You can also, there's modules called quantizers. But in the box, no, there's no quantization of the pitch anywhere inside the box. So that is purely a tune it in by ear, by tuner. You will need some external stuff to do that, but yeah, it's part of the fun, I think.
I dial mine in personally, just very fine tuning for each one of those.
I'm not an equal tempered sort of guy. I prefer just intonation anyway. So,
Well, why don't you show us some more of what you can do with a couple of these units? How about just two together, two DFAMs together, and rip into it just like you were earlier. It was fantastic. I think we're going to get some great questions coming out just based on some of the things that you were doing. You had some of those ratchet effects and some of the patching on the fly to create different things.
One of the patches is talking drum. Can I break down the patch? Oh, yeah, the talking drum. Ooh. Oh, that's a good one. So how did the talking drum work? Let's see. And there's only one patch chord, too. That's really good.
Yeah,
I can do that. Maybe I can do that.
So have you seen
that's funny. Stuff goes by fast.
All right, so that needs to be square. Over there.
So is this hard synced? This is hard synced, yeah, totally. Is that? Oh, yeah, it's a nice bouncy.
What's up?
Beat there. Do we need pitch? We don't really need a whole lot of pitch. You can do a little fuzzy pitch stuff. Yeah. What we're going to do, so breaking this down. So I got this about set up. Let's go to step one. So our basic sound is something like this. Now we're not there yet, are we? No. Cut off, resonance. I like resonance. Down. VCF decay. And there. Oh yeah. Well, we'll turn that up in a minute here. Okay, so that's sort of a basic drum sort of sound. It has kind of a hollow sound. That's because we're not even monitoring this. There. And you can give it a little bit of decay. I like a little bit of decay, honestly. There we go. Nice. All right, so then what we do is we add in filter modulation from VCO2. We're not even listening to VCO2. Oh, you do need resonance. There we go. That's what it is. Yeah. Okay, you start to hear this sort of vocal sound.
Right.
All right, so what's happening there? So your voice is a kind of filter. Your mouth and stuff form what's called formants, and vowels have 2 to 3 formants each. And when we modulate the cutoff of a resonant filter with a square wave, we can actually kind of trick it into having the same spread as some of the formants. And that's why you need a little bit of resonance to get that to work. Let's see what happens when we run this pattern. It's kind of hard to find that sweet spot where you dial it in. But you can hear that by modulating the filter cutoff, and that's somewhere around, that's at 200 hertz, so if we maybe put it at 300 hertz. There we go. Maybe a little less modulation from the filter envelope. So the trick is then just to kind of, we could get in there and tune things so it's just right.
You could really hear that wide palette even within one example, coming out of the manual.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. One of the things I remember talking to Bob about is like how, like on a mini Moog, for instance, just the original mini Moog, every single setting is its own instrument that you have to learn how to play. And if you start thinking about that, it's like, yes, and this is sort of the same thing. And so you're not just, it is an instrument, but you're changing your instrument. You're playing your instrument. Not the physics, well, yeah, the physics of your instrument. It's really, so you really are doing that. That's why it's so much fun, I think. Let's see. So talking drum, and then yeah. I wonder if I was clear. Hopefully that was clear about how you use the square wave to modulate the filter cutoff up and down. Somewhere around 300 to 250, 300 hertz seems to be the magic spot, and a small amount. And you're basically tricking your ears into thinking there's 2 formants instead of one.
Just the one.
Yeah. It's a trick.
Yeah, neat trick. It's a trick
for
sure.
Yes. So other things you can do with the DFAM. One of the things, as I mentioned, you can do is to run the clock at audio rates. So it doesn't just do rhythm. You can get it to do drones. In really nice sometimes. And when you, for instance, if I set this pitch control to all different steps, I can create a waveform essentially that's an audio rate waveform, and when I hit one of the PCOs with it, I get this interesting exponential FM effects. Yeah, so you can mix these nice rolling, kind of evolving drones.
The sequencer just on its own is lost.
Yeah, you can do it here. So we're doing FM is on both. And that's what happens when you slow down. So, yeah, you can have a good bit of fun using it in unusual ways, so that it's not just a rhythm box.
Yeah, most certainly.
But that kind of the freedom to go in between the two is fun. It's fun.
And so many reasons to use more than one at a time. When I talk with a lot of DFAM owners, I'm often asked, is there any reason to have more than one? Because a lot of people get more than one Mother-32. And after seeing what you can do with more than one DFAM, it's very clear that it's like you have all of this extra sound source at your disposal.
Yeah.
And modulation capabilities.
Yeah, my favorite setup is having two of these like this, and just kind of go into town on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, what's better than one Mother-32 is two Mother-32s, and that's why I use three of them. It's just like the more the merrier. You're going to get so much more out of it, especially with the connectivity between putting all of the systems together and connecting it to other Eurorack systems and other gear, because it all is voltage, even with some of the variations that are out there in Eurorack. It's all standardized.
Well, it's not standardized, I should say. There's no Eurorack standard other than the actual melody.
Right.
But voltage, there's different people use different voltage practices. The main thing that you'll find is that we make our stuff so that you don't blow it up. That's
right.
good.
Right. You're not going to blow it up. Well, if we don't have any more questions at this time, if we want to get into a little improvisation of your own, Mr. Dunnington, that would be fantastic. Maybe it'll spark someone's thoughts.
So we got one more question. Do we have one more question? Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, we could.
We're waiting for that.
Let's start. Yeah, pulling some of this apart. I want to molt this. Want to use the Mother-32 as our primary clock source, or do you have a different idea? Making executive decisions here.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, so the question is, why did you put a high-pass filter on DFAM, and how did you settle on the filter design? Okay, well, so I'm going to answer these questions slightly backwards. Going back to the discussions of the origins of the DFAM as coming from the Voyager, if you have ever had a chance to mess with the Voyager, you'll notice there's a switch on the filter section that says high pass, low pass, right? So there is a high pass filter in the Voyager, and it's a clever trick where you essentially can feed. If you mix the input to the low pass and the output of the low pass, you can get a high pass. There's a certain phase relationship there. And it's kind of a cool sound, actually. It's not technically a real, it's not a real high pass filter. It's a sort of it's a trick. A lot of this stuff is sort of done with tricks. It's math, but it works. Anyway, and the DFAM, on the Mother, there's a high pass filter version, and that's straight from the Voyager. And on the DFAM, did a little extra figuring and figured out how to make a resonant high pass filter. So why did I put it on the DFAM? Well, let's see.
You know, take your clock out of there.
Well, let's see what happens. Well, basically, because it gives you a lot of broader sounds that you can get. So how did you show how high pass you specifically from high pass to low pass boom? Okay, so in high pass mode, what is this sound I have? That's sort of a really gross kick kind of sound. High pass mode, when you turn the high pass cutoff all the way down, you basically are hearing the straight oscillators, okay? And as you turn the cutoff up, you'll hear the low start to get cut. And if you turn it all the way up, you basically have no low. And then if you flip to low pass, the boom comes back. So if I was doing a high pass transition to a low pass, you would probably do something like that, where it's going up and up and up and up, and then flip the switch, boom, and then you can go from there. Now you're not going to be able to go instantly from a bright sound to a dark sound without a fancy move here, like that. But if you do both at the same time. Yeah, so it's a matter of just timing and learning when to flip the switches, but yeah. I think that's what you were asking about. Yeah. I hope so. I don't know.
I mean, along those lines, you know, the DFAM does have a very booming low end to it, and if you just humor me here for a second. To really, yeah, we're going to rough it up a little bit more with that square wave.
So, what do you get if you have two DFAM versus two Mother versus one DFAM plus one Mother? Oh. Well, it kind of depends. So, one of the things, so DFAM, the gestalt is a little bit chaos, the way I kind of think of, whereas Mother, the gestalt is bass lines, melodies, and you can get chaos, you know, it's no problem, but DFAM is a little bit more chaos embodied. So it really depends on what do you like? What do you like to do? I mean, if you hate computers and don't want to sync to anything digital, and I mean, you can sync to digital stuff with DFAMs, absolutely. But if you're more of I just want to make experimental stuff, maybe a pair of DFAMs is more your style. You get, you know, the VCOs and the DFAM. You have hard sync and linear FM with a VCA on the linear FM amount on the VCO2. So that's kind of an interesting. If you're into experimental sounds, I
find it to be a very freeing instrument. Not to interrupt you,
yeah.
I get a lot of DFAMs in front of people new to synthesis in general, and usually within 5 minutes, they're smiling and having a good time, and a lot of it's because the sequencer, every step is a knob. Everything is a knob or a switch. It's just a lot of fun, even when you don't know what you're turning to start with, where you start to find out. And just to elaborate on what you're talking about also, between the two, between Mother-32 and DFAM, is, and I had this thought myself, and I talked with someone in LA one day who described it the same way that I did, without any solicitation, and said that the Mother-32 is a synthesizer that's capable of doing drum sounds, whereas the DFAM is a percussion synthesizer that's also capable of all these synthesizer sounds.
That's a good way of looking at it.
It's such a clear way of looking at it. So when you have one Mother-32 and one DFAM, yeah, you can do very, very organized music, but you can still do very freeing, very free-running, experimental, sample and hold, ever-evolving type of music with it too. But for sure, 2 DFAM is going to be that, I think, very freeing, very opening type of environment to work in. These questions are fantastic that we're getting here.
Let's see. How to sync DFAM to computer? Can you clock it with a loud audio signal? Absolutely you can, yeah. All you need is a cable that has one end, 3.5 millimeter, that would go into your trigger input or your advanced clock input, depending on whether you want to trigger the envelopes or whether you want to clock it. There's absolutely no need that you have to clock the sequencer. You can simply trigger the sounds from notes. On the other end, you need this to be maybe a 1/4 inch or something going to your sound card. If you have the possibility of drawing a square wave, all you need is a single pulse, right? So you or record a square wave or draw a square wave in your waveform editor. It needs to be loud. But absolutely.
We tried that actually not too long ago.
It works fine.
It worked perfectly.
Yeah. So the one thing, if you're controlling a DFAM from a computer, do you clock it and use a sequencer? Yes, you can do that. Or if you don't want to be beholden to the sequencer, you can also just trigger it, right? And then let's see, possibility of mother firmware update that will disconnect sequencer from OSC. Well, okay, so oscillators. So this is probably the most requested feature. Sadly, that would be a circuit board revision, not a firmware revision. That is hardwired. The same signal that appears there also goes there. So you'll notice in the DFAM that there's a switch.
There is a switch, yes.
Okay. Let's see. Request DFAM each step triggerable via CV. Interesting. It already is. Interesting. Yes. So you have an advance, right? You can only ever trigger one step at a time. That is truth. You can only get to each step sequentially through the advanced clock port, but you can advance, as I said, with any rising edge that goes above about 2 volts. We'll move the step forward.
And grab that triangle.
Well, here, I believe this will do it, right? Let's see if this does it. Should.
The VC mix.
Maybe it doesn't do it. There's probably some reason it doesn't do that. Oh, yes, there is.
Mix 2. You were talking about
That's
right?
okay. It's not going to do it. But as I said, yes, square wave. Oh, because I'm not right. Silly person. That's why. All right. So I can, anytime I move this up above somewhere, where was I?
Oh, you just in the wrong
place here, right? Where's that threshold? There's right there. Where's that? Somewhere around 2 volts.
Yeah.
Okay, so any signal above around 2 volts will advance the clock. And stop it, turn that up. Same thing. Well, except that's not gonna work. So in theory that should work, but it's not. But anyway, you can trigger you have a separate trigger and a separate clock input, so you kind of can do that. Please release subharmonicon. That's another question that came up. I would love to.
I think it's a demand.
I would love to do that. It's a very, very fun and bizarre creation. Keep asking for it if you like it, if you really want it. We do listen. So let's see. So yes, can you trigger more than one step at a time? No. It's monophonic. It is. But you can get a lot of.
Yeah. You were showing me something that would almost simulate a sample and hold of the steps, though, with some randomness by some very quick movement of the steps, which I thought was fascinating.
Oh yeah. So okay, that's interesting. Yeah. So what was I doing? We're modulating VCO2 up here, right, with this. And some are low, some are high. Yeah. And then we're taking VCO2, and then we're going to clock from VCO2. All right. I think.
Create some really interesting beats that way.
Yeah, so that's using a VCO as a clock source that's being modulated. The frequency is being modulated, and so your tempo is basically coming from here, but your rhythmic pattern is. Bizarre use, but also very fun. So how are we doing on time? Are we?
Well, I think we're getting close to wrapping it up. Unless there's any more chat comments that we have that we can help you with.
We appreciate everybody who came out and watched us.
Thanks for choosing Moog. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah.
Hope it gave you some newfound enjoyment and excitement about getting some more synthesizers and putting your synths to good use.
Yeah, dig in. It's fun. Good. The more you dig, the more you'll find. So
yeah. Right on. Thanks, Steve Dunnington. It's a
Thank
pleasure.
you, Steve. Maass.
We'll see you all next time.
Thanks. Okay. I'm a total ding dong.